sisters, we've all turned up the radio to hear Brother Jimmy Lakey, from coast to coast and shore to shore. Now raise your voice, oh, let us all, Jimmy Lakey, get out of bed, Jimmy Lakey, raise your voice, Jimmy Lakey, Lakey, hey, can't live without it with Jimmy Lakey, Jimmy Lakey.
I think my New Year's resolution, my friends, ought to be to learn how to do more dance moves than just that one. But for now, that's all you get. Good morning, everybody. Lakey is here. The first Monday of the Lord has made for us to get together on this glorious year 2026. I was setting up some of the stuff for the show, and I realized I was typing 2025, but I think we got it all fixed. Welcome to 2026. Happy New Year, kiddos. How was the New Year? How were the holidays? We have not been together very much, but goodness gracious alive, here we are. We're back together, reunited, as Peaches and Herb said, and it feels so good. Nothing to talk about, right? Nothing to talk about. All that Maduro guy, Venezuela, nothing to talk. Okay, there's a lot to talk about. Let's dive into it. I want your thoughts on it. First of all, you've heard the news that under the cover of darkness, our U.S. military went in and arrested Mr. Maduro, the president of Venezuela, and said, hey, we have a warrant that's 5 years old that you've been indicted in America. More than about 70 countries in whole say you're not the legitimate president. You're kind of illegitimate. The duly elected president is not serving in Venezuela. So it's time for you to go bye-bye. And after weeks and weeks of going bye-bye, not going bye-bye, Maduro said, President Trump said, well, if you're not going to exile yourself, then we're going to come and take you into custody here. And him and his wife were taken into custody late Friday night, early Saturday morning. And what say you? It is amazing to me. You can like the policy, don't like the policy. Is this regime change? Why are we getting involved in Venezuela? I get all that. You can make all the arguments as you want, and you can have a very intellectual take on it and a very thoughtful take, and maybe disagree with President Trump. Maybe you agree with President Trump. But what I think is ultimately the most hilarious thing is, once again, you have a case to where some people are intellectually bankrupt just simply because they have a hatred for Donald John Trump. Listen, you can disagree with a Trump policy. You can disagree with anybody's policy, but at least be able to back it up with some kind of consistency. And for some reason, the American left, if they find fraud with the Somali daycares in Minnesota, suddenly they have to defend the Somali pirates because Donald Trump, they can't have Donald Trump looking good about purging out waste, fraud, and abuse in the government. And with the arrest of Maduro, you see the exact same thing. People who just can't handle the fact that maybe this was a good thing. If you dislike the policy based on this or that, that's fine. But to pretend as if Donald John Trump is the only guy that's ever done this with a foreign leader, and it's amazing to me that they just if Donald Trump's involved, they hate it. Remember a few weeks ago, it's on the screen. No kings. They had the No Kings protest. We don't want kings ever. We don't like kings. Donald Trump's trying to be a king. Well, what about the mass murdering dictator / king of Venezuela? That it was a huge violator of human rights and killings and all sorts of things that he did. Oh, that king's different. So the American left, all they have to do, because I think they become intellectually bankrupt, they can't think through something. If you're going to say you're for no kings, then you should be thrilled that the Venezuelan dictator is done. You also should maybe pay very close attention to when you have American Democrats, that's right, people that voted for Joe Biden, people that vote for Jared Polis, people that vote for Gavin Newsom out on the streets protesting and saying, how dare you remove Maduro? And yet you look under the people and the families that were killed, murdered, and that died under the regime of Maduro. They took to the streets by the millions in Venezuela and celebrated his departure. And so it's just amazing that the American liberals, the American Democrat Party has gone so intellectually bankrupt because of their Trump derangement syndrome that all you have to do is say Trump, I'm against it. That's all you have to do. If you want to make the argument that you don't like the policy, make that argument. Let's have the discussion. But just because you have Trump derangement syndrome does not mean your opinion is right. It doesn't mean your opinion is well grounded. And it doesn't mean that we have to believe anything you say because you're probably lying. Let's put some historical perspective in this as well, okay, my friends? Well, this is a regime change. Well, the argument is it's not a legitimate regime. They stopped counting the votes, and he took over, and you can look that up, and Chavez was before him. But this is not the first time that the United States has decided to take into custody a head of state somewhere, legitimate or not legitimate. Let me bring this list up to you. Of course, you have Nicolas Maduro we're talking about. Do you know that Saddam Hussein, by the same account, was actually a legitimate elected president? He was the head of a state of Iraq. We took him out. To go back to 1901, we took out Emilio Aguinaldo of the Philippines. Anybody remember Manuel Noriega? Really, it's almost an identical indictment and an identical action against what we did against Manuel Noriega for running drugs back in the 80s and 90s. The cocaine capital there, Manuel Noriega, was taken into custody, captured when he was the president of Panama in the 1990s, 1989-90. And then John Bertrand Arista, he was the former head of Haiti in 2004, and he was taken into custody and captured by the United States of America. So again, if you want to argue that you disagree with those or disagree with this one, you can do that. It's perfectly okay to do so. But let me ask you, could you at least have some intellectual consistency? Here's one that some of you might remember. I was finishing up my my high schooling days around this time, but there's Manuel Noriega being brought into custody. Look who's holding him. That is the head of a state, and that's Manuel Noriega. And I think that patch on the guy's shirt says the Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA. And so it was, again, law enforcement in America that went into Panama and extracted the son of a gun and brought him here and put him on trial for drug running and conspiracies and all the things he did. So there is precedent here. You don't have to like the precedent, but you just have to say that it is the precedent. Now, I was listening to some commentators yesterday, and they say this is going to give carte blanche for Putin to do bad things. And listen, again, the precedent is already there. This has already been proven that throughout the course of the last century and a half, the United States of America has been willing to go in and capture and or remove people from office. Again, don't like the policy is one thing, but to pretend that Donald Trump just pulled this out whole cloth out of a hat, and this is unprecedented in American history, and now we have a threat to democracy. Shut your pie hole. Have some dignity, have some honesty, because that's not the case. The list is long of how many have been captured, and then you can get into the NATO support on the day that Muammar Gaddafi was killed. You can look at why we were ever involved in Libya. A lot of folks say that was probably unnecessary after the long Afghanistan war and Iraq war. So again, have the argument. Here's my question for all of you. Do you agree or disagree with the policy? Do you agree with the arrest of Maduro? Do you think Nicolas Maduro deserved to be arrested? Was that the role of President Trump? Was that the role of America? Do you agree for that? I'm just asking a question for you if you think that is the right or wrong move by anybody to make. Do you agree with the policy of extracting and removing Nicolas Maduro from office, and he's going to be arraigned today in New York City? I'm telling you something that's going to drive me nuts here, this 2026 in the news, is if every time I have to turn on, let's say Fox News, and I have to listen to somebody tell me what Mamdani of New York City says, I honestly am going to just turn the dang thing off. Fox News is what I usually will tune in first thing in the morning, and then I scroll a little bit. And when I got there on the television early this morning before the sun came up and kind of had it going in the background, it was a long discussion about Mamdani called President Trump directly to register his opposition of removing this dictator from office. Do I care? Do I give a rat's ass what Mamdani, the socialist mayor of New York City, had to say? Is anybody else with me? If there's one thing that's going to make me turn off the old Fox channel, is if all these New York-centric assignment editors and New York-centric personalities think that, yes, we I think that, yes, we need to know what Mamdani says. I don't care. The socialist pigs in New York and the Democrats elected Mamdani. You guys I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. It is a glorious city. We'll watch them destroy it. It's bounced back before when Rudy Giuliani. Hopefully he doesn't break anything that can't be fixed. But listen, Fox News, if you're paying attention, and I'm sure you're not, or you would have already hired me for the vast talent that I have, I have to say that it was to be. I don't care. I don't care what Mamdani says. I don't really care. Another controversy is out there. And again, I want to come back to this. I want to remind you that this is not something that's unprecedented. This is setting a bad precedent. The precedent has already been set by the United States for a century and a quarter that we capture these sons of guns and bring them into custody if need be. That's already been established. So this is not establishing some new precedent. Is it good policy? I don't know. Was it good policy with Manuel Noriega? Was it good policy with Saddam Hussein? Was it good policy with what was his baby doc? I think was his name in Haiti. That's his nickname. Was it good? You can disagree with the policy, but it's not something as if Donald Trump, look at him, he's setting a new precedent. He's not. This is something we've gone back to 1904 in the Philippines, and we'll arrest these sons of guns if we need to. Again, good policy, bad policy. That's a discussion, but the American left just says Trump was involved. It must be bad. Trump was involved. It must be bad. By the way, I want to play some video, and this is again the Trump derangement syndrome on display here. You ready for this? The display. This is Chuck Schumer talking about how disappointed he was in the first Trump term. This is back in the first term, and he was disappointed that Donald Trump had not taken out. He had not taken out Maduro. Watch this. This is
words. He brags about all these things he wants to do or is doing, but his actions. He brags about all these things he wants to do or is doing, but his actions belie his words. Maybe the best metaphor was his claim to bring democracy to Venezuela.
So watch this. This is, again, 4 or 5 years ago. So more than that. It's about 8 years ago. This is Chuck Schumer saying, you said you would bring democracy and get rid of Maduro. How dare you? This is old Chuck Schumer. Again, on display, the intellectual bankruptcy of these people. Watch this.
There was a big policy there. It flopped. If the policy was working, Juan Guaido wouldn't be in the balcony here. He'd be in Venezuela. He'd be sitting in the president's palace, or at least waging a fight to win. He's here. And the president brags about his Venezuela policy? Give us a break. He hasn't brought an end to the Maduro regime. The Maduro regime is more powerful today and more entrenched today than it was when the president began.
So what can the Congress do about it?
All right, so here we have.
Well, the next question is very simple.
This was yesterday, over the weekend. This is now Chuck Schumer taunting that President Trump had failed because he said he would bring Venezuela democracy. He had not. He says the president that should be there is sitting in the balcony here. We should have brought regime change, and that guy should be sitting in the presidential palace in Venezuela. So Chuck Schumer, back in the first term, was belittling Donald John Trump because he says you didn't bring about regime change. It's the first of the year. I can't talk. You didn't bring about any regime change. How dare you? And this is him yesterday acting very serious on ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Here we go.
And that is that we have the War Powers Act. That's a privilege resolution, which means the Republicans can't block it. Tim Kaine and I and Rand Paul are sponsors of it. It's going to come to the floor this week. And if it is voted for, if it's voted positively in both houses, then the president can't do another thing in Venezuela without the okay of Congress. We have to pass it.
President Trump say that he intends for the United States to run Venezuela? It was reckless. It was dangerous. And looking at the president's demeanor, he didn't even seem to be aware of how dangerous and reckless it is. Let me be clear. Maduro is an illegitimate dictator, but launching military action without congressional authorization, without a credible plan, for what comes next is reckless. Now, I was in the skiff on 3 different occasions, as recently as December, and I asked the administration, I asked them, are you pursuing regime change? Are you intent on taking military action in Venezuelan territory? And they assured me that they were not pursuing those things. Clearly, they're not being straight with the American people. So I've been talking to so many members of my caucus today. Everybody is very, very
very upset.
Totally troubled, worried about how dangerous this is.
Isn't that what they've been saying about the Trump administration, the first term and the second term, where the Democrat caucus is very troubled about how dangerous it is? Again, maybe it's a bad policy, but for Chuck Schumer to actually say this is a shock, we're very upset and this is very dangerous. You've been saying that. Hell, Joe Biden said that people that voted for Donald Trump, the MAGA crowd, was very dangerous. And so you can't pretend that your hair is on fire, and you can't pretend that this is some shock, and now the Democrat caucus is all shocked and horrified. You've been horrified for years. We can't take you seriously anymore. It's the boy or the girl or the transgenders that cry wolf, and it just doesn't work anymore. And so listen to Chuck Schumer opine about how very horrified he is at this policy. Again, bad policy, good policy. You tell me. That's your question of the day. But does anybody give a rat's ass that Chuck Schumer's acting like it's a threat to democracy once again?
Let me lay out just a few of the actions that have already been taken to hold the Trump administration accountable. First, Leader Jeffries and I called on the Trump administration to brief the Gang of Eight immediately, followed shortly by a briefing for the entire Congress in the beginning of next week.
He brags.
So there you have it. You kind of get the idea. Chuck Schumer says, look at all the actions we're doing. Your actions here are no different than the actions before. All right, that's your question of the day. Do you agree or disagree with the the arrest of Maduro? Do you think it's a bad thing? And any of you students of history, let me ask you, and again, I'm open to hear it. I was traveling yesterday, not had as much time to go back and do a parallel, but the brief parallel that I did between Manuel Noriega is, and a lot of us probably weren't even old enough to pay attention during the days of arresting Manuel Noriega, but there is a precedent for this, and was it the right precedent? I don't know, but there is something that is there is something that was happening, has happened before in 1990 when Manuel Noriega was arrested as well. So give me your thoughts. Roger says the damage from Maduro was done under Biden with emptying the prisons. The borders are closed. The threat has primarily been removed. The global capital expended was not worth the price. I was listening to an interview of somebody who's a kid who died of drugs they think came from Venezuela. They were very excited on one of the newscasts that I was listening to while I was traveling. So everybody's got a different opinion. It's okay to have a great different opinion. But again, I just laugh at the left acting shocked and horrified that this has ever happened, and Donald Trump is making up his own way. Well, it's happened before. Rich says, didn't they say we would be at war with North Korea because President Trump's actions in his first term? Rich, that's a good point. They always, usually the left always says this is going to end in war. He didn't think this one through. He hasn't thought through, calling him little rocket man. And President Trump so far has oftentimes been underestimated because some of his actions might be a little bit unorthodox, but they're not unprecedented. And that Rich has a good point that they said that. So we'll see how it all plays out. We're going to take a military perspective on this also. Because I was listening to Daryl Issa of California, a former representative from California, said any other time that things like this have happened or any kind of an action by the president usually results in boots on ground. And again, don't like the policy, do like the policy, but he was giving a perspective that it is crazy amazing that President Trump has been able to do two pretty large changing, globally altering military actions, bombing the Iran nuclear sites, and do this without actually putting boots on the ground or an occupation of an area. I think that was a pretty interesting perspective, especially when you look at how long the operation took. It's an operation that took about 6 hours. There was a lot of flash, bang, booms, and it's really interesting to see how this went about. I'm sure the books will be written. Again, find yourself this. If you're supposed to have your hair on fire, last week the American left said we were supposed to have our hair on fire, that you were a white supremacist if you dared to look at the Somalia daycare. This week, you're supposed to consider yourself to be a white supremacist or a bad person if you support this policy of arresting Maduro. So feel free to jump into the conversation. But the question is, do you agree or do you disagree with the arrest of Nicolas Maduro? Do you think it's good policy, bad policy? And love to get your take on that. All right. Oh, by the way, the week before that, we're supposed to be angry at Nick Shirley. Now they don't want to think about Nick Shirley. The American left, again, you're not going to get any traction with anything if you just, Donald Trump's bad, if you can't make an argument. There's a comment on the YouTube: Chavez and Maduro confiscated U.S. oil installations and then sold the oil to the enemy states, China, Russia, Iran. In that act alone, Maduro should have been brought into custody. If you do recall, when Chavez, his predecessor, took office, that's when you had U.S.-based companies that had oil rights and drilling rights, and basically they were stolen. And so there is something to that this is something that maybe should have happened and never allowed those leases to be hijacked. So there is that revenge. And why did it go on so long? And by the way, if we're not supposed to be messing with Nicolas Maduro, why is it that at the end of Joe Biden's term, he raised the bounty, I think, from $25 million to $50 million, that anybody could lead to the arrest of Nicolas Maduro? So give me your thoughts. Do you believe that it is a good policy, bad policy? And do you believe that it's a good precedent? Again, this is not precedent setting. I want to remind you. Somebody just says on the YouTube, I disagree. We can't change a foreign head of state with charge a foreign head with a crime and kidnap them. What's next? Well, we've done it before, over and over again. We've charged a lot of heads of state and captured them. And so if you want to know what's next, probably about 20 years, we'll do it again. That's probably what's next. So again, have the perspective. We can't do this. What's next? We've never done it. We've done it before. And again, you don't have to like the policy, but we've done it before. And this is not something that is outside of the purview of the American government. It's happened before under different administrations. Arloa jumps in from Texas and says, agree with President Trump's actions. His number one job is protecting our country. That's what a lot of Trump's folks say. This was an American first policy. Those were. I was talking to a friend who pays attention. He was talking about these dark ships we confiscated, that oil tanker. That evidently that tanker has been being surveilled. They know the exact location of that place every time it moved around for many, many years, and those were violations of international law. That's another question. A lot of the world leaders agree that Maduro was violating international law. And yet some of these people now horrified that Donald Trump basically came in and enforced international law. If we're going to have international law and no one's going to enforce the international law or the precedents that are out there and the blockades that are supposed to be there, then why do we do them anyway? If it's all just a bunch of lip service, and that could be exactly something to think about is why is it that we oftentimes talk a big game, we put bounties on people's head, and we say that they're very bad, very naughty guys, and yet we never do anything about it. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Feel free to jump in here. Monday, the 5th day of January, year of our Lord 2026, first Monday of the year. Let me get your take on it. Agree or disagree? Agree or disagree with the policies of the United States and taking out, again, Maduro as the president. He's going to be arraigned. Let me give you a quick update on that. I got some other stories. I got a story of reuniting. Remember, the American left hated, they loved they loved Elon Musk when he made the Tesla. Then they found out that he might support President Trump, and so they have to hate him because if you like Trump, they have to hate you. They go apoplectic, and then they were sort of burning down cars and things. Remember, burning down the Tesla dealerships, and then they kind of laid off Elon because he had a public falling out with Donald Trump. And now over the weekend, they had dinner together at the Mar-a-Lago, and he says it's going to be a very great 2026. Very great 2026. He's very, very excited about 2026. And we should be. We should be excited about 2026, right? Yeah. Trump and Musk cue up the Peaches and Herbs song, reunited, and it feels so very good. They're reunited, and that's going to cause the left again to go apoplectic. They'll start burning down Teslas again. Be very, very careful, Eli, because, again, intellectually bankruptcy. Like Trump, I have to burn something. I have to destroy something. Donald Trump also threatened Iran. Speaking of policies you might not like, if you haven't seen this story, Donald Trump threatens Iran and says, listen, if you there's protesters. I don't know if you've seen this. So protesters are on the streets in all around Iran. And the mullahs have been hiding, and all of the ayatollahs have been hiding, and it's quite interesting to watch what's happening in Iran. And President Trump reiterates his warnings against the Iranian regime, said Iran, quote, would get hit very hard by the United States if more protesters are killed during the demonstrations that have now entered its second week. He said on Air Force One, we're watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get very hit hard by the United States. The new threat came just days when he said, if Iran violently kills peaceful protesters, the U.S. will come to their rescue, adding that we are locked and loaded and ready to go. That's what he said on Truth Social. So take that for whatever you think it's worth, and put that through your filter on how you view the Trump policies as far as, is this the Monroe Doctrine? It's kind of like the Monroe Doctrine on steroids. But give me your thoughts. Everybody, give me your thoughts. Do you agree or disagree with what you saw happen over the weekend in Venezuela? And tie that onto these threats against against the Iranian terrorist regime there. All right. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let us know, do you agree or disagree? I'm going to welcome to the program Marine Corps Colonel William Dunn. He's retired. Has written a book called Gunfighter's Rule. He's been on the program before, and he's going to jump in here to the fray with us and tell us what he thinks of the actions over the weekend. And he'll put that military perspective, that military paradigm to it. Retired Colonel William Dunn, thank you for your service, and thanks for coming back on the show, sir.
Well, hey, thanks for having me, sir. How you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Happy New Year to you. First Monday back in the saddle. I'm glad to have you here.
Yeah, Happy New Year, and what a great weekend we had for diplomacy and for protecting our nation, our country, and our men and women all over this country.
Kind of talk about your perspective as a military guy. Do you think, do you look at this and say, wow, why are we getting involved in another foreign entanglement? This is going to be 20 years of Afghanistan and Iraq again. Or do you look at it and say, this is good. This is the purpose that we should use our military for. Give me your thoughts.
Well, it's both, right? Number one, I think it had to be done. I think it was way long in executing. Our brothers and sisters in arms right now did an amazing job. They went in there, and I've worked with some of those folks before on different missions, not to this size, but they're so professional, exquisite planning, and they took out one of our adversaries to bring him to justice. The big thing for the listeners, he was not the legitimate leader of any country. He was a legal leader, if you will, and he was a fugitive from American justice, and we went and got him. So that is great. Now, the challenge is what's next. That's always the problem. We did this in Iraq. When Saddam fell, I was in Iraq in a city called Karbala, and I ran the Civil Military Operations Center for a 500,000 city. Caracas is about a 1.8 to 2 million person city, and that's going to be the focus, I believe, in getting this country back on its right steps. We have to focus there. We've got to work with whatever government becomes or emerges, whether it's this vice president lady or whether it's the actually elected government when they get in place. We've got to work together and get Venezuela back to being a prosperous nation and a nation that's going to work with all other nations in the area for safety and prosperity.
Could we argue that we got involved very lengthily in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the withdrawal under the Biden administration was just a disgraceful part of our military history? But could we argue that, hey, this is our hemisphere, this is our neighborhood, and we need to make sure that we have this? Maybe is even more important than something happening in Afghanistan and Iraq, that we tend to dip our nose into the Middle East. This is in our backyard. Is that a point?
Yeah, it's a fair point. Anywhere, and history shows us over and over, anywhere there is a lack of power or lack of credible power, it becomes a power vacuum, and it's often filled with terrorist organization or bad actors. That was already taking place in Venezuela. Bad actors were coming in the form of Russia, China, Iran, in our back door, very close to Florida, and the rest of the United States is right there. So, everybody's going to argue whether this was an oil play, whether this was a regime change. And remember, it wasn't a regime because he was illegally there. So there was no regime to change. So it's a good safety step for the hemisphere and for the region. I will say this, and this is what I caution, right? And if anyone's out there listening that's in the administration, the next step is the most important. This was the easy step. Our brothers and sisters in the military can do this all day long anywhere. They're great. We call them the others that go in and get people in the middle of the night. They can do that anywhere. It's the next step that is the hardest in keeping that country from failing and keeping it from turning into a humanitarian disaster. So that's what I would focus. I'd focus on Caracas. I'd focus on a diplomatic solution. And then I would focus on getting whatever government, whether it's the interim government or becomes the fully recognized government, work with them, not just the United States, but other countries, so that there is not a humanitarian crisis that can really spiral out of control quickly.
It's funny that you say they're not a legitimate regime, and that's one argument. And then the people say, well, you can't have regime change. Well, if you believe that was a regime legitimate, there wasn't really regime change. His vice president is now in charge. So the same regime is just different at face. So the critics of this want to have it both ways. They want to say this is regime change, but the regime is still in place. Do you think that the vice president or the second in charge to Maduro will continue to run that country?
No. For the short term, yes. The Venezuelan people have already shown in their level of protest, in the amount of positivity from this action, that they do not want that regime. So they should put their duly elected people back in. It should be a transfer of power. And what I would offer this vice president, whatever left of, we'll call it the Maduro regime, I'd offer them a safe off-ramp. Let's not put them all in jail. Let's not put their backs to the wall. Give them a safe off-ramp to do a legitimate transfer of power. And maybe, what we don't know is how much of the current government, to include maybe the vice president, may have helped us in this transition.
Yeah.
We did not go in there blind. We knew everything about where and when this gentleman was going to be, and we went and got him, and that was not by accident.
Yeah. If you're listening later, where thousands of earballs will listen on the podcast version of the show on iHeart, Spotify, etc., you listen to the voice of Marine Corps Colonel retired William Dunn, president of Strategic Resilience Group and author of a book called Gunfighters Rule. We'll talk about that. He founded the company in 2015 after completing 33 years in the United States Marine Corps. He flew in many of the world's deadliest hotspots, dozens of combat missions, and attack helicopter pilot as well. Talk with us just when you woke up on Saturday morning and saw what had happened overnight, probably while most people were sleeping in America, from a perspective of a guy who's been on combat missions, kind of give me your, first run at what happened and were you impressed? What ran through your mind, because you have a different viewpoint than we do?
Well, the first thing that I was very interested to see if there were any casualties, U.S. casualties. I expected there was going to be some Venezuelan casualties. That is what it is. I was very pleased to hear, and I think we did have some wounded. They have not officially said that, but I heard President Trump state that some of our service members were hit, and I know one of the helicopters was hit. So I hope those men and or women, whoever was hit, I hope they're going to be okay. I'm praying for them. So that was my first concern. It did not surprise me one bit that we executed that mission. We trained for this. We trained with our SOF brothers and sisters. routinely, and I know there was some multi-services involvement. I was surprised how fast it happened. That was very impressive. I thought it would take a little bit longer. I think they're quoting this as about a 2-hour mission. Very little time in the airspace. So that's amazing. I was very pleased with that. And then the big thing that jumped out at me was the next step. When we got rid of Saddam Hussein, I was a major forward air controller we were operating from Baghdad and we ended up in Karbala, and we were ordered to fire the interim government of Karbala, and we were ordered to fire the military. And every Marine that I knew that was a terrible idea. If we do that and we fire the military in Venezuela, that's a huge mistake. And if we fire the interim government, that's a huge mistake. We have to do this in a campaign, and we have to do this very sequentially. And like I say, it starts with being calm. And when I say being calm, I'm talking about from the current administration in Venezuela. They need to be calm, because I would not mess around with President Trump. He's shown his ability to use U.S. might to right wrongs that are impacting our men and women in this country. And so I would not mess with him. And what I would do is use that as a way to have a diplomatic solution if I was the interim president of Venezuela.
Give me your thoughts, if you will, on the use of special ops. That was amazing. You have drug enforcement, U.S. law enforcement running right against probably some of those clandestine type missions in the U.S. military. That's a fantastic partnership. How does that work? Have you seen that kind of involvement and interaction before?
Yeah, absolutely. We did some operations in places overseas where the Marine Expeditionary Unit, which I was in command of 22 MU, which happens to be the same MU that's out there right now. And the MU, the Marine Expeditionary Unit, will work in different levels. Like, for instance, in our mission, back when we were in different areas, we would provide quick reaction force, we provide medevac, and we would provide TRAP, tactical recovery of aircraft and personnel. And we would be on standby, and these large packages would launch, and the Marines are loitering someplace. The special ops guys are in different aircraft going in, and everything is lined up precisely if something goes wrong to get our men and women out of danger. And so that's how they do it. These hard people that train for these missions, they are prepared, and I think they're prepared for anything. And I've seen them work in some of the most amazing environments, and hats off to what a great mission they executed.
You've trained, and you obviously ran on a lot of combat missions, flying that helicopter in some very dangerous situations. You train, and then the call comes and says, go. What's that like? Training is one thing, but these men and women had trained for this mission on Friday night, Saturday morning, and they finally got the call to go. Is that something that do your emotions change? Just kind of give us that thought when you finally get the call that this is the time we're going to do exactly what we've been practicing.
I'll speak for myself personally. I don't know. I'm sure I don't know most of the people that executed this mission on the soft side, but the ones that I've seen and the ones that I've worked with, it's pure focus, just pure focus. People don't, in my opinion, they don't get afraid. They're not afraid. They're not coming home. What they are is they're focused on the mission. They go in, they know the risk, and they go in and they execute. And when things don't go the right way, they plan branches and sequels, and they plan contingencies, and they work their way through them. And so, in this mission, one of the first things that took place is one of the helicopters got hit. And what they do, they returned fire. They devastated the enemy. And then they got that aircraft safely back, and it was able to continue the mission. So they're just prepped. And that's what we do, is we go in this mindset where you want to say this, you're prepared for anything, any contingency. And some things will pop up that you're not. And your training just allows you to operate around that issue, and you find a way to solve it, because there's no option, right? If you don't solve it, you don't come home. So you solve it. Your brothers that you're fighting with, you solve it. You fight your way through the problem set, and you come back.
The voice of Colonel William Dunn, retired from the U.S. Marine Corps, and has written a book called Gunfighter's Rule. Were you surprised to hear? Well, you mentioned the quickness of it. The stories are the Maduro, once they got to him, he kind of surrendered. Didn't seem maybe even to have that bit of a security bubble around him. Give me your thoughts on that. You thought this would take longer. Is that because you thought that the Venezuelan military would put up more of a fight, or the Venezuelan President Maduro would be able to at least have some private security? Kind of give me your thoughts on the quickness of how this happened.
Yeah, I suspected there would be a little bit more confrontation. And, he did the right thing. Surrendering, not putting up resistance was the right thing. I was surprised by that. And what you see a lot of times, and when you see a lot of bravado from an enemy, when they're looking down the barrel of your rifle, they're not as bravado anymore. And I think that's what happened. Is he's talking a lot of bravado online, and we've seen a lot of his rhetoric over the past few weeks. I think he actually dared Donald Trump to come get him. When he's staring down the rifle barrel of one of the others that come to his house, he did the right thing in surrendering. And if not, I don't think he would be in New York right now. I think he'd be dead. So I'm glad he did surrender. What you don't want to do is you don't want to fight an enemy that's willing to to fight until the last man, the last person, because then a lot more casualties. So when they surrendered, I'm glad they did. But yeah, believe me, if you do not want the others coming to your house, and so the warning goes out, Secretary Rubio, put some warnings out. You do not want these men to show up at your house.
Yeah,
you do not want them. So, do not do bad things, and bad men, hard men won't come visit you in the night.
Yeah. Again, if you're listening to the podcast version, thousands of earballs will hear this show by the end of the day, end of the week. Colonel William Dunn, United States Marine Corps, retired, and the name of his latest book is called Gunfighter's Rule. You mentioned the next steps. You mentioned back in Iraq, they were told to, after Saddam Hussein fell, fire the military, fire everyone, tell them they're out of there. We didn't do that. However, President Trump has stirred up a little bit of controversy that he says we're going to run Venezuela now that Maduro's in custody. He's drawing a lot of criticism. Like, what do you mean we're going to run Venezuela? Give me your thoughts. We didn't fire the military and we didn't fire the second in charge, but President Trump says we're going to run this place.
Yeah, I think a better word would have been support, right? Our president, what I love about him, and I hope everybody does, he doesn't mince words. Right? He says what he wants to say. I think the better term would have been support. Running, when you say you're going to run something, it implies we're going to put a ton of boots on the ground. It would take a lot of manpower, a lot of military power to run a country. We can run through support, and I believe that is the would have been the better term. We'll see what happens. But what they definitely need. They definitely need security. They can get that in the form of the United States, because now a power vacuum exists, potentially. Another country, another one of our adversaries could pop in. We cannot allow that to happen. So maybe a better term was support their growth in democratic process. But what we have to do is not allow an adversary nation to have better I would say better engagement now with the current, the actual current regime, which in theory is not legitimate either, because the vice president was placed by a guy that was not elected. So it's a very complex situation, but one that can be resolved with a little patience and diplomacy.
You've made comments that the USS Iwo Jima, this is where Maduro was taken immediately after his capture, kind of was a signal. It showed a little bit about the operations here. Give me your take on, I know we had the elite Delta Force soldiers capture him. He goes to the USS Iwo Jima. What do you read into that?
Well, it's standard practice. So the Iwo Jima is part of the Tutu Mu ARG, Amphibious Ready Group, Marine Expeditionary Unit. When I deployed with Tutu Mu as the CEO, I was on the Baton. I was on the Bat Arg. So the Iwo Jima is an outstanding ship. It's full of sailors and Marines, and what they'll do sometimes, and I've been part of this mission before, is if the conventional forces of the Marine Corps, if there's too many of them on, sometimes they'll move us off, put us into a support role, and they'll bring in the soft forces, put them right on the ship, and they'll work with us. They'll share spaces, and then on that ship is a medical capability, a very robust medical capability to take care of wounded men and women. It's also to take care of wounded prisoners if there happens to be any. And then there's also a brig on the ship. And so you can put someone in jail right there on the ship, and I'm sure that's where he went. And it allows for the projection of power anywhere in the world. The ship is a part of a complex of ships that can protect themselves. And that ARG-MU will have upwards of 31 aircraft. It's going to have MV-22s, Cobra Hueys. It's going to have Joint Strike Fighters in some cases, or Harriers. And it's going to have CH-53 heavy lift. The Navy will have some of its own capability for search and rescue. And those assets can be joined and tie in with assets from anywhere in the world. And we do it often. When we work with our SOF brothers and sisters, it's never an issue. It's a very seamless transition. And the more prevalent these missions become, we'll have liaison elements, special operations force liaison elements with the ARG-MU, and they will work directly with our SOF teams and give them whatever support they need. So it's a seamless effort between all teams.
I'm not sure anybody had arresting Maduro on their bingo card for 2026, especially in the spectacular fashion that it happened. But what's amazing is you're talking about these assets that were moved in there, a lot of people involved, a lot of training, and yet it seems like somehow we kept the element of surprise, and everyone was surprised by this. It wasn't on the bingo card that we were going to send special ops in there and take him in the middle of the night and arrest him. Give me your thoughts. How do they keep this so secret? Did a lot of folks not really aware of what was going on until the very last minute?
Well, the people with the need to know knew. And so we did a deployment once. I had to take a group of Marines for a very secret deployment once into Kuwait. We did not tell the Marines we were going to Kuwait until we landed in Kuwait. They knew they were going away. They knew they were going for somewhere for a year. And there was about 20 people in my unit that knew where we were going, and we weren't allowed to tell anyone until we got there. That's no different than this type mission. The people that needed to know knew. And, you see a lot of rhetoric on why the folks in Congress did not know more. Thank God. Yeah. Right? Thank God. The more people that know puts our, men and women in uniform in danger. And imagine if they had been briefed and one of them slipped something up on purpose or by accident to the press and said, hey, we're going to go get Maduro. That would have put this entire mission at risk. So the secrecy and the classification needs to remain. And when you do that properly, there's not a mission we cannot execute in this world. And you saw what we did in Iran. You've seen what we've just done in Venezuela. That can be replicated anywhere as long as the operational security is maintained and there's time to properly prepare and plan. We can do it anywhere to any enemy.
You served 33 years in the U.S. Marine Corps, obviously climbed to the rank of colonel, or retired now. As you watched what Hegseth did here, what the president did, Rubio, give me your comparison, 33 years to other administrations that you served under and served faithfully under. Was this extraordinary by our Secretary of War? Is this something that any Secretary of War and or administrations could have pulled off? Give me your thoughts. You've served a long time.
That's an outstanding question. The will and capability of the military, in my opinion, has always been there. Okay, we have got to be able to execute. It's our job to be prepared, to be ready to go anywhere, anytime, any location, any threat. That's our job. And we train to it. Our leaders put us in the right direction. We train to it. what it requires is support from your elected officials. And it requires support from presidents. It requires support from secretaries of war, back in the day, secretaries of defense. And if you are not given that full support, it puts us in danger. And you have to have the right equipment, the right personnel, and the right training. And imagine if any one of these people that executed this mission were put there only because of what they looked like or their ideology, instead of being the best at what they do. And that is where other administrations, I think, have failed the military. The military is not a social experiment. Our lives are at risk wherever we go. Even in peacetime, the lives are at risk. And every man and woman and every parent in America should demand that their child is being led by the most appropriate men and women in our service. So I think that's the biggest difference, is will and support.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no DEI hire. They have the best person on the job, whoever that was doing this thing. Real quick, you served 33 years, and back in 1990 or so, this cat on the screen got arrested. This was not an unprecedented move. Manuel Noriega. You were obviously, if you were in at that time, you were much younger and not at the rank of colonel that you ended up. Give me your thoughts. People act as the Trump derangement syndrome. They get all upset. This was unprecedented. We've never done it. This is very similar to what happened to that cat Noriega back in 1990, is it not?
It's absolutely. The biggest difference is my business partner and another Marine of mine, one of my best friends, he deployed to Panama and supported some of these missions. So yeah, it was a little bit more conventional. But the reality is, if you're an enemy of the United States and you are a wanted man in the United States and there's an indictment, you are not safe. Yeah. Stop your activity and we'll come and get you. And that needs to be the message to any of our threats, is that this president is willing and able to execute, and our Secretary of War and our War Department has the decisive capability to execute these plans. And there's always risk, right? If we keep doing this, will a plane get shot down? It's very possible. It is a threat. It's a risk. But you have to look at the big picture. And the big picture sometimes is going out and protecting our borders, protecting our American citizens from this crazy fentanyl problem, and then hopefully keeping our men and women in the military at the highest level of readiness, because that's what we need, and that's what we should demand.
One more quick question for William Dunn, retired colonel. We'll talk about his book, Gunfighter's Rules, tell some of his story, 33 years in the military. As you were listening to, I guess, the talking heads, the pundits, the politicians, the people that have the Trump derangement syndrome, you listen to the whole spectrum over the weekend. What was the one message you wish that people would understand about this mission? Good, bad, indifferent, ugly. What's probably, I guess, maybe the biggest misconception or the biggest lie that's been told about what we did over the weekend?
The biggest lie is that there's a lot of pundits coming out and saying this was illegal and unconstitutional. Not true. That's a false narrative. 100% constitutional and legal, and executed precisely. So that's what I would throw out. They want to make it that there was a constitutional breach here, and there's not. This is no different than some of the missions that President Obama did, President Bush, President Clinton. Presidents have, whether they're on the left or right, whether Republican or Democrat, they've got to make decisions, and hopefully they're making decisions for the good of the country. And it's easy for anyone to, second guess and throw the baby out with the bathwater, if you will, and throw this unconstitutional thing. Unfortunately, many of our brothers and sisters in this country are not constitutional scholars, and they hear that and then they just think it's bad. Yeah. How many lives were saved? American lives were saved by taking out or reducing this drug traffic in the United States? Maybe hundreds of thousands. We'll probably never know the real number, but I bet it's a lot. And hopefully it'll continue to reduce the deaths of these drug overdose and the drugs coming to the country.
I'm guessing folks probably, anybody who served remembers their oath that you're going to protect the U.S. against enemies, foreign and domestic. And when you look at the people being murdered on the street, this was a foreign enemy that was doing nasty things. And, see what happens next. Do you think the other countries nearby are paying attention? I mean, I'm thinking I've called for years Mexico's a narco-terrorist state as well. They came out and condemned this. Last question for you. What does this speak, and what do you think the takeaway will be for these other neighbors that are really run by cartels as well?
Well, it's a shot across the bow. I think they realize that they are at risk. And one of the important things to do as a nation is you have to be able to hold adversaries at risk. Now, some of them will probably say, if I do not stop my current behavior, maybe I'm next to get a visit from the others. I don't think that's good. That's our policy. I hope it's not our policy.
I hope not.
But our policy needs to be reducing the flow of drugs into the United States and having support from our neighbors to help us get to that end. If we can get there, it will reduce the flow, and hopefully they can stay in power and then just support us, be a good neighbor.
Yeah. Truman said, walk soft, carry a big stick. I hope that's the foreign policy, and I hope we don't have to use that big stick often, but hope people know we have one if they need to know it. They need to do it. Colonel William Dunn, retired U.S. military, U.S. Marine Corps. Talk about your book, Gunfighter's Rule. It's your story. It's your saga, and it's some harrowing tales of what you accomplished flying those helicopters in the Marine Corps.
Well, hey, thanks. Thanks very much. Yeah, so I wrote this book after 33 years in the Marine Corps. It kind of takes me back all the way when I was a young kid, and I started to find out what a Marine was. The first Marine I met was a cousin of mine, and I didn't even know what a Marine was. And then, my dad was in the Air Force. He kind of told me what the Marine Corps was. As I grew up, I decided to join, and then I spent my life in. I loved it. I was a forward air controller in Iraq, where I went through a regime change with Saddam Hussein. We were part of that. We were the first Marine battalion in Baghdad, and we fought all the way up, and I talk about that in the book. And then fast forward a few years later, I'm back in Iraq as a squadron commander of the Gunfighters, HMLA 369. We deployed to Al Taqaddum, Iraq, spent 7 months in combat. We brought everybody home, brought all our aircraft out, and we took the fight to the enemy. And then I kind of close it out as I get back and come back into civilian life. So I think it's a very interesting book. I've had some good feedback on it, and if you get it, I hope you enjoy it.
Gunfighter's Rule. The book is available on Amazon, anywhere great books are sold. If folks want to follow you, stay in touch with your work, where do they go, Mr. Dunn?
They can go to colonelwilliamdunn.com, and then I'm William Dunn 369 on Facebook.
Appreciate you. Thanks for your service. Thanks for your analysis today. Kept you a little long, but I do appreciate your time. Retired Colonel William Dunn. Look him up. Get his book. It's called Gunfighter's Rule, and we would I think you'll enjoy the book. I've read a copy of it and have a copy, and it's good stuff. So thank you very much, Colonel William Dunn, retired from the U.S. Marine Corps. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you about Sherry Cree, our good friend, sponsor of the program. She's a fantastic realtor. By the way, now you're past the Christmas, you're going to pack up the Christmas decorations if you haven't already. And what are you going to do? You're going to be thinking, well, maybe this is the last Christmas at the home, or maybe you needed a bigger home for the holidays. Listen, you need to talk to Sherry ASAP, like real quick. You need to get on the horn, give her a phone call and say, let's talk about my real estate strategy. Listen, did you know we talked about this with Sherry a couple of weeks ago, that, some people wait until March, April, May, or June, July, say, I'll just sell during the summertime. And she's has experience where some people are, the seller's market is actually strong right about now in through the Super Bowl. Just after that, there's a kind of a first selling window in which you can literally make thousands of dollars more if you can get moving there. So you want to make sure you time it. There's a strategy. It's which month, which week, which day, which neighborhood. She can kind of talk about the market trends, because for her, she understands that real estate is something that can help you build generational wealth. Maybe you're starting the first of the year going, I'm not sure I'm positioned for generational wealth. Well, why don't you use your real estate to make some good moves so that you can be ready for generational wealth and taking care of the family long term? Listen, there's a lot of strategy to it. It's not just sticking a sign in the yard. It's not just slapping a fresh coat of paint, putting lipstick on the pig. There's strategies as to timing. There's strategies as to smart things to do to get your home ready. Maybe you don't have time to do any of that. She can help you get all that done. Maybe you've got an elderly parent that it's time for them to downsize or move, and they're here and you're watching somewhere else. Listen, whatever the case may be, you're that I-25 corridor in Colorado, Sherry Cree, homeswithsherry.com. Go to the website. And again, you've been putting this off at holidays. I got to call Sherry. Go ahead and start talking because get that strategy going, get that home listed, let her know what you're looking for if you're a buyer. And again, a month or a few weeks can actually change whether it shifts from a buyer's market to a seller's market, just based on demand and when people start listing. So make sure you're playing the market correctly, buyer or seller. Homeswithsherry.com, right there on the screen. Homeswithsherry.com, 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 and make sure you mention this program when you do talk to her. Homeswithsherry.com. I want to show you a photo here if I can. That's a little kid at our Legacy Christian Academy in Rwanda saying thank you. A lot of you, I think some of you got some of the red coffee mugs for Christmas, and some of you get these thank you notes. I want to say thank you. You guys helped us close out our year very strongly, and we appreciate that. And believe me, we needed it. And it's always a struggle running our school in Rwanda, Legacy Christian Academy. If you're new to the program, you'll see this banner behind me that says Rivers Promise throughout the course of 2026. I hope that you would consider becoming a monthly donor, maybe a child sponsor an individual child. You'll know their name. They'll write you letters. They'll send you photos, and you will help a child just like that attend Legacy Christian Academy. Maybe this is the year that you finally want to reach out to say, can we travel to Rwanda this year next with you? We always say trips. Thank you for all that you do. And if you do some time, spend some time on our website, riverspromise.org, riverspromise.com, or riverspromise.org, and maybe contemplate, maybe it's a $5 donation a month, maybe it's a $10, maybe it's a one-time gift, whatever the case may be. Thank you for helping us in 2025. Our work's not done. Our work continues in 2026, so you'll hear us talk about it again and again. And something we'll be unveiling and revealing real soon is that we have a capital campaign that's going to launch here soon. And I got to don't want to drop everything on the desk here. This is our primary school campus. I should put this, I'm just holding up props because we're cheap like that. That's our Legacy Christian Academy primary school campus. This building here is already there. You see in the background of the photos. We got to finish the rest of this complex, and even another building back here that wasn't originally on the draft. But we right now pray about this for 2026. We have $300,000+ set aside as matching funds that our job is to go raise the other $350,000. And in doing so, when we raise the rest of that matching funds, we're going to build the first building we're going to do hopefully real soon, very soon. We're working on that now, is right back here. There's a teacher housing complex because teachers is a very remote area. We've got our first $100,000 on the teacher housing project. That's going to go here. Anyway, so if big companies, small companies, individuals, you'll hear some of the building program capital campaign that's coming up in 2026 as we build Legacy Christian Academy. So as you get your New Year's resolutions together, your New Year's budget, your New Year prayer list, all that stuff that you're praying about, considering, would you please put on the name of that prayer list, Rivers Promise, and maybe on your donor list as well. And the kids will thank you for that. I love holding that photo up. Rivers Promise. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for this stolen memes section of the show. This is where we circulate the globe, where we steal internet memes to illustrate absurdity or to prove a point, and also to have a little fun. And then eventually, after we steal 4, 5, 6 of them, usually the communist Chinese step in and say, stop stealing intellectual property. We're the ones that do all that. So anyway, let's do it. Let's do our you ready? Very ready for that? It's time for the stolen memes section of the show. Let's go. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Yeah, there's the American left. Some of you creeps are hanging out on the YouTube channel, looks like today. No kings, unless it's an authoritarian dictator who murders and traffics drugs. Yep, those are the sexy women of the left right there. A belly like that, you might start playing for the other team. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. There's the libs after a week of defending Somalia fraud and now having to defend an authoritarian dictator and also no kings. Yeah, I'm sorry, left. You guys I call it pretzelized. You bent yourself into such a twist. And it's all based on not intellect. It's all based on Trump derangement syndrome. You guys need help. You really do. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. My best Forrest Gump. And just like that, all the No Kings protesters rallied in support of the Venezuelan dictator. That's not bad, is it, Delilah? I mean, I didn't practice that ahead of time. You should give me credit for that. Just like that, all the No Kings protesters say, yeah, we like that king, Maduro. Put it back in office. Put it back. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. I'm opening a gym called Resolutions. It's going to have exercise equipment for the first 2 weeks, and then it's going to turn into a wine bar for the rest of the year. Where's that membership at, Delilah? You're not allowed to go there. You have enough wine hidden around the office, I think. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. If you ever helped push a car, ran beside it, jumped into the last second, dropped it into gear, and popped the clutch, you lived through a legendary time. Today's kids will never understand. Anybody do that? Jumping in the last second, pop the clutch. I was usually just pushing. They wouldn't let me behind the wheel. It's dangerous. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Here's your point of view camera. If you're Maduro at 2 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, that's what Maduro woke up to, laying there in bed. Hello, how you doing, Maduro? Nice to see you. Around and around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Donald Trump Jr., that's the son of the president, put this meme out on his Instagram feed via the White House, FAFO. That means F around, find out. Pete Hegseth said the same thing. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. There it is, the gong from China, and that means it is over with the program for the day, or at least the meme section of the show. Hey, I got an announcement for you on the 20th of January. We'll be getting some details out, send out some graphics, put an image up for you here real soon, but it's 2 weeks from tomorrow, the 20th of January. We're going to begin our first of the 2026 road show. And the road show is going to take the show on the road, and we're going to go back to the scene of our original and only road show of 2025 in Colorado. If you're in Colorado or want to come in, love to have you on the January the 20th. It's a Tuesday morning. We're going to be on the road show, and the road show is going to be originating from Casbar Cigar in Lafayette. You may remember that's where we did our inauguration party last year. It was like -5 and icy and snowy. Some people drove in for a couple of hours to get there in horrible weather. I'm surprised producer Chad and I showed up in such bad weather. Our food trucks couldn't show up because they were freezing. So it was still a packed place. And by the way, they've upgraded the ventilation there at the Casbar Cigar. It's in Lafayette, not far out of Boulder, and not far out of Denver as well. So we'd love to have you. It's January the 20th. This show will be live. That's our road show. We got other road shows going to come together, working on a road show in Texas. Hello, Texas. Working on one of those kind of road shows coming up in February, March, trying to get some dates on there. We'll keep you updated. But throughout the course of 2026, we're going to take this show on the road every so often. It's going to be the Lakey Unleashed Road Show, and we'd like to have you there. So mark your calendar, January the 20th, a Tuesday. It's the first anniversary of the second inauguration of Donald John Trump, and it is also just a good time to get together, and we'll talk about prizes, food, and all the fun stuff that you'll do. There's no cover charge to get there. You just show up, first come, first serve, and we're going to pray that the weather this year is going to be much better than the weather was last year. From Tuesday, January the 20th, the road show is on, and we'll be broadcasting for the program on the at the Casbar Cigar in Lafayette, Colorado. Look it up. I'd love to see you there, and that's coming up Tuesday, the 20th day of January. All right, good to have all of you here on the program. It's a pleasure to be here. It's Monday, the 5th day of January. Don't forget, if you missed part of the program, you can always rewatch it on all the platforms you're on, or what you can also do, my friends, is you can go to all the podcast platforms, Spotify, iHeart, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, anything where it was listen to find podcasts. Just look up Lakey Unleashed, and you can listen to the show again and again and again, and we always appreciate you doing so. All right, don't forget the charity, riverspromise.org. Everybody, good to have you here. Happy New Year. 2026. Isn't it great? Happy New Year, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Good Lord willing, the creeks don't rise, and producer Chad lets me push the buttons again, then we'll be back here. As long as we keep Delilah away from the computer, that'd be a great thing. That's a New Year's resolution. Until we meet again, may God bless you. May God bless America. I am Jimmy Lakey, unleashed, and peace. I'm out of here.